The first time Sharon noticed the pattern, she was trying to drink her coffee before it went cold. She sat on the back steps of her little house, mug warmed between both hands, bare feet on the cracked concrete. Her beagle Jackson sprawled across the sunlit rectangle of the patio like someone had dropped a patchwork blanket there and forgotten it. Above her, the yard's tangle of maple and ash and telephone lines held a mess of sparrows. They were always out there. She had heard them every day since moving in. Today, for no real reason, she listened. Not as background noise, as if it were a radio station she could tune. Cheep, cheep, cheep. A run of sharp notes. Then a pause. Another bird answered with the same three-note phrase, shifted up in pitch. Somewhere else, a thin, rapid trill. Wings, a flutter, then the same three-note phrase again. She had an ear for repetition. It came from years of half-finished hobbies. Piano lessons that lasted just long enough for scales to etch themselves into her muscles. A brief obsession with Morse code in middle school. Dog training videos watched late at night, not because Jackson needed them, which in itself was impressive, as he was a beagle after all, but because it was soothing to see cause and effect line up so cleanly. Cheep, cheep, cheep. Pause. Answer. The same pattern, almost perfect. She listened long enough for the coffee to cool and for Jackson to roll over, sigh, and start snoring. When the hawk passed overhead, nothing visible at first but a moving shadow that dragged across the lawn, the sparrows changed channel. A harsh, scraping call burst out. Every bird fell silent for half a breath. Then the same harsh note echoed from 3 different directions at once. The hawk's shadow slid to the street and away. The sparrows relaxed. One hopped down to peck at her neighbor's gutter. Another shook out its feathers. Their voices slid back to the 3-note pattern as if someone had flipped a switch. Sharon set her mug aside and stared into the branches. That was not random. Jackson's nose twitched. He snorted awake, looked around, then flopped his head back onto his paws. His eyes met hers for a moment, deep brown and questioning. "You saw that too," she told him. His tail thumped twice. Agreement. Or maybe he was just happy she was talking to him. It was always hard to tell. She usually trusted her guesses, though. Her guesses about animals felt as solid as weather. You could be wrong about the exact degree, but you knew if rain was coming. She sat there until the sun climbed, and the birds found new branches and other things to shout about. The 3-note call kept echoing in her head. Later that afternoon, she opened a spreadsheet. She sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop, Jackson curled under her chair, and labeled columns with things like call pattern, context, and response. In the past, her spreadsheets tracked utility bills or client appointments at the grooming studio where she worked part-time. This one would track birds. She wrote down what she had heard that morning from memory. Short triplets for general chatter. The harsh scraping note when the hawk passed. A high tremble she had not paid attention to, but remembered now as background, thin and constant. Then she moved her work outside. Over the next week, the neighbors learned to ignore the sight of her sitting in a folding chair with a notebook, a cheap audio recorder, and a pair of binoculars she had fished from a thrift store bin. She tracked calls and context. Hawk overhead. Squirrel on fence. Cat on shed roof. People walking past the yard with shopping bags and headphones, and no idea that the sparrows were broadcasting their presence. She learned to recognize 4 patterns fast. One pattern summoned. Food here. A soft, repeated chirp that always coincided with someone scattering bread, or with the moment her neighbor dropped a piece of bagel on the driveway and cursed under his breath. Another pattern meant fight. 2 males circling each other with wings flared and feathers puffed, voices harsh and insistent. The most important pattern, in terms of survival, was the alarm. After the hawk the cats. After the cats, the dog. Her dog. Jackson began appearing in the margins of her notes. Alarm triggered at 8:13 when Jackson entered yard, then dropped back to normal when he lay down. She was not a scientist. She had scraped through community college with a degree in general biology and a mind that wandered whenever lectures got too abstract. But she respected data. She respected repetition. By the second week, she could hear the alarm call through the walls. It yanked her attention away from the dishes or her phone when it sounded. She would glance out the window and find a neighborhood cat slipping between trash cans or a hawk's shadow, stretching like a knife across the yard. If she played the recording of that alarm back from her phone, the sparrows froze. Every time. She tried it exactly 3 times before guilt stopped her. Jackson tilted his head and whined at the gate, distressed in a way that did not match his usual easygoing confusion. Even the squirrels paused, tails rigid, eyes bright and hard. "All right," she muttered, hitting stop. "I get it. I won't yell fire in a crowded theater." The phrase felt flippant in her mouth. The look the nearest sparrow gave her was not flippant at all. It was the same bare branch, the same bird. A female, by the look of her plain brown body and the way she sat slightly apart from the flashier males. Sharon could not be sure the bird understood the moral dimension of false alarms. She only knew that the bird's stare felt like a reprimand. "Sorry," Sharon said out loud. "Experiment canceled." The bird flicked her wings. Not forgiveness, not exactly. More acknowledgement. Then it turned away and resumed preening. Sharon added a note to her spreadsheet. Alarm playback causes visible stress. Do not repeat unless necessary. She was good with rules like that. She always had been. When she was 8 years old, their family dog, a shaggy mutt named Archer, had limped onto the back porch with a bloody paw. Her father went for the phone. Her mother went for a towel. Sharon went for Archer's face. He had been panting, eyes wide. She put her hands on either side of his head and told him, calmly and clearly, what would happen next. They would clean the paw. They would wrap it. They would go to the vet. No one would yell at him. No one would be angry. It would hurt, but not forever. He stopped panting and rested his forehead against her chest, as if he understood every word. Later, when Archer was on the operating table and she was in the waiting room, wedged between stacks of dog magazines, her mother told that story 3 times. Once to her father, once to the vet, once to the receptionist, who smiled politely and handed her another clipboard. "She has a way with animals," her mother said. Grown Sharon remembered that, sitting on the back steps of her own house, listening to birds and watching Jackson nose the air. People always said that, like it was magic, like it was something soft and unmeasured. She had never minded the compliment, only the airiness of it. This, she thought, watching a sparrow flick its wings in her direction, was not airy. This was pattern. This was vocabulary. "So," she told Jackson that night as he snored on the couch beside her, "you and I have some work to do." He thumped his tail and did not wake up. It still felt like agreement. The first phase with Jackson was simple. Catalog what she already knew. She had lived with him for 5 years. She could already tell when he needed to go out, when he was lonely, when he was bored enough to eat the mail. There was the excited bark that greeted her at the door when she came home, higher pitched than his generic, "Hey, something's happening," bark. There was the soft whine he made when thunderstorms rolled in and the air pressure dipped lower than his comfort zone. Now she watched him as if he were one of her spreadsheet columns. Every sound, every wag, every shift of his ears got a note and a context. It made her feel faintly guilty at first, as if she were stealing something private from him and pinning it to a corkboard. She got over that when she realized how much calmer he became, not more self-conscious, as her attention sharpened. Jackson seemed to enjoy being studied. His body loosened under her gaze. His tail moved with the slow certainty of a metronome. He knew she was listening. She started with the vocalizations alone: bark height, bark length, whine frequency, the difference between his growl at the vacuum cleaner and his growl at the raccoon that kept investigating the trash cans at 2 a.m. There were differences, clear ones. The raccoon growl sat lower, thrummed with something she felt in her own ribs. The vacuum growl sounded almost embarrassed, like a person muttering at a printer. She tried mimicking them, badly, in her kitchen. She cleared her throat and growled soft and low. Jackson blinked, ears perked. When she pitched it too high and too long, his head tilted, confusion sliding into amusement. Yes, dogs could look amused. They did it with their eyebrows. "Okay," she said. "So sound matters, but it's not enough." She could tell, from her own clumsy attempts, that she lacked some information. Dogs did not only speak with their throats, they spoke with the angle of their bodies and the way their weight settled through their paws. The next stage took longer. She filmed him, hour after hour, using an old phone propped on a stack of books. She filmed him greeting her, begging for food, and reacting to sirens. She filmed him in the dog park with strangers, in line at the vet, at the grooming studio where she worked, and where he came along to charm nervous clients. At night, she scrubbed through footage, frame by frame. When Jackson barked at a jogger passing too close to their yard, his body was already aligned with the fence. His nails dug into the dirt a fraction of a second before sound left his throat. When he whined at her bedroom door during a storm, his body stayed turned halfway toward his crate, as if he had not fully committed to asking for comfort. His weight was on his back feet, ready to retreat. It was like watching a foreign language suddenly sprout subtitles. She saw patterns in how far his tail lifted, in whether it wagged from the base or only from the tip, in the set of his jaw and the closure of his eyes. A dog could raise a paw for a half-dozen distinct reasons. She started to untangle which was which. Curiosity, request, warning, invitation. Once she started looking, she could not stop. She found herself watching other dogs too. The long-legged shepherd that dragged its owner past her house every morning. The old bulldog who dragged his feet like an exhausted actor during walks, only to spring to life at the scent of fast food wrappers. Strays in internet videos filmed in countries she would never visit. Some nights she woke from dreams where everyone around her, human and animal, flickered with meaning she almost understood, their gestures layered and fast as bird calls. She brought it back to Jackson. In the beginning, their conversations were rudimentary. She would sit on the kitchen floor facing him, knees up, arms around her shins, and mimic his posture as best she could. If he leaned forward and huffed, she leaned forward and huffed. If he shifted his shoulders to one side, she mirrored him. It felt ridiculous. He loved it. The first time she got it right, really right, he froze for a heartbeat. Then he sat down in front of her and very deliberately placed one paw on her knee. The gesture came with a short, soft bark, just one. She heard, as clearly as if someone had spoken in her ear. "You get it." The translation was not in English. It was not words. It was a bundle of impressions and intentions. But when she transposed it into her own language, that was what it became. Sharon laughed, a sharp startled sound that echoed off the cabinets. "Say that again," she told him. This time, when she leaned forward, she let her shoulders settle into the angle that matched sincerity in his body. She narrowed her eyes the way he did when he was focused, not aggressive. The bark that came out of her felt strange in her throat, but right in her chest. His tail swept the floor. He pressed closer. That soft bark came again, and with it another packet of understanding. You, me. Same. Yeah, she whispered, voice rough from bending her vocal cords in unfamiliar directions. Same. The boundary between guess and comprehension had been sliding for weeks. Now it snapped into place. It did not mean she understood every bark, every whine, every huff that passed between them. Language was large. It meant something more dangerous. The idea that, in principle, she could. There was a system to it. A map. All she had to do was keep walking. The first time she realized it worked on other dogs, she nearly started a street fight. She and Jackson were waiting at a crosswalk near the park. It was Saturday. The air vibrated with lawnmowers and kids yelling, and a distant ice cream truck looping its tinny song. A man with a Dalmatian walked up beside them. The dog held itself tall and stiff, chest forward. Its eyes slid toward Jackson and away. The Dalmatian's tail wagged, but only at the tip. Jackson glanced up, then looked away, body motionless except for a brief declining sweep of his own tail. Sharon could read the exchange as clearly as any human snub. The Dalmatian radiated self-importance. Jackson chose to ignore it. A few months ago, she would have smiled at the owner, maybe commented that their dogs were saying hi. Safe, empty words. Today she watched the Dalmatian a moment too long. The dog's lips twitched. A low vibration brewed in its chest. Easy, the man told it, hand tightening on the leash. The dog's ears tipped back. Its eyes flicked toward the man's fingers. The tension in its neck did not change. Sharon's own shoulders tensed in mirror. She shifted her stance so that her body landed between the dog's, weight grounded, knees bent. When she spoke, she did not use words. She threw a soft sound into the space between them. A short nasal huff, then another, timed with her breath. Her mouth stayed closed. The sound rose from her chest. Every dog in hearing distance turned. The Dalmatian's head snapped toward her. Its ears surged forward. It looked at her with something that was not simple curiosity. She let her gaze rest just above its eyes, not directly into them. Her tongue touched her teeth as she made the sound again. This time, she let the meaning ride it. Not yours, not now. The Dalmatian's weight shifted almost against its will. You could see the conflict, a flicker of fight, then the sudden relaxation as the dog's paws adjusted. Its tail settled into a loose arc. Its jaw unclenched. The man let out a breath. Thanks, he said, uncertain what exactly he was thanking her for. Sharon swallowed, heart thudding. Nice dog, she answered. Her voice came out higher than usual. He listens well. They crossed when the light changed. Jackson took advantage of her shaken focus and zigzagged, nose down, tracking a chip bag into the gutter. She let him. Later she wrote down what had happened in the same spreadsheet that tracked bird calls and Jackson's paw placements. Same structure, new column. Data. Other dogs, understand. That night, when she lay in bed with Jackson snoring against her calves, and the window cracked open to let in the cool rush of distant cars, she listened to the backyard. Crickets. A lone owl. The rustle of something small in the leaves. She found herself wondering what would happen if she tried. The owl called again. A low, questioning hoot. Sharon closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She did not know owl syntax. She barely knew dog syntax. But alarm and reassurance spanned species. She had seen that in the sparrows. Every animal had a way to say danger and a way to say safe. She chose the softer one and pushed it out of her throat, a low hum that vibrated her rib cage, then a slow exhale. The yard held still for a moment, as if listening. The owl's next call landed with a different weight. She could feel the awareness, sharp and clear, like someone turning a flashlight onto the house. Not words, but enough. Something in her chest shivered open. It did not happen overnight. The story, when it later made its way onto local news, and then the internet, and then into her inbox in the form of flooded messages, wanted to be simple. Girl who always loved animals wakes up one day understanding them. Magic trick, gift, curse, whatever label people were most comfortable using. The reality was long evenings of watching, listening, and screwing up. A cat bit her, gently but firmly, when she tried to apply dog rules to cat body language. Where dogs used a direct look to mean, "I see you," cats could fire a direct stare like a weapon. She apologized out loud to the tabby in the grooming studio's waiting room. The cat blinked slowly, irritated forgiveness, tail flicking. She spent an hour on the park bench with a flock of pigeons, trying to decode their soft coos and bobbing steps. By the end of it, she had learned that bread ranked above dignity, and that pigeons did not care about her feelings unless those feelings translated into food. With every new species she'd listened to, the same pattern emerged. There was vocabulary, there was grammar, there was culture, and there were individuals. Jackson spoke in short, decisive bursts. He was a dog of clear opinions and quick decisions. He wanted specific things, and made those desires known. Walk, food, chase, comfort. When she began truly hearing him, he adjusted too. His requests became more subtle, not louder. He did not need to bark 3 times if she caught the flick of his ear on the first. Other dogs were different. An old Labrador in the park spoke like a retired schoolteacher, phrases layered with memory and soft reprimand. A terrier mix at the shelter where she started volunteering ran his thoughts in spirals, repeating patterns of worry and hope and worry again. She sat in his kennel on Saturdays, back against the concrete, and hummed reassurance until his panting slowed. The staff noticed the change. "That dog never settles for anyone," one of the technicians said, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Talking to him," Sharon said, because she did not feel like lying. "Sure," the tech replied. "Whatever it is, keep doing it." Word spread in the small, fast way things did in town. The shelter staff asked her to help with difficult cases. Owners at the grooming studio asked if she could tell them why their dogs chewed shoes or stared into corners. She could now, most of the time. "He's not haunted," she told one anxious woman who was convinced her spaniel saw ghosts. "He is listening to the heater kick on and off in the wall. It sounds like scratching to him. He thinks something is trapped in there. Can you let him investigate it when it starts, so he understands?" The spaniel confirmed that diagnosis with a relieved sigh when she knelt on the floor and put her ear to the heater alongside him. At least that was how it felt. The woman tried it at home and reported that the staring stopped. For every small triumph, there were moments of failure. A nervous rescue greyhound misread her attempted reassurance and bolted, crashing into a trash can. A parakeet in a tiny cage at a pet store screamed itself hoarse when she tried to mimic its call. She backed off, apologizing. "I am still learning," she told it quietly. "I should not experiment on you." The parakeet did not forgive easily. That was fair. She logged her missteps alongside her successes, not out of self-punishment, but out of respect. Language had to be handled like a scalpel, not a toy. One rainy afternoon, when the shelter was quieter than usual, she sat in an unused exam room and flipped through the pages of her notebook. The columns, the little graphs she had sketched in the margins, the fragments of half-translated thought. A picture emerged there that did not fit in any of the categories people like to use for animals. They were not children, not fur babies, not little fuzzy people trapped in non-human bodies. They were themselves, and they were aware. She had always believed that at some level. Now, with a weight that felt like a hand settling between her shoulder blades, she knew. When she looked up, Jackson was watching her from the doorway. His head tilted. "What?" she asked him. "Do you think about the word soul?" Soul was not a dog word. It was not a scent. It was not a thing you could stand on, eat, or chase. She had no expectation that he would grasp the concept. Jackson blinked. His ears rotated. Then carefully, he padded into the room and rested his chin on her knee. The feeling that reached her was not vocabulary. It was a shape, familiar and impossible to translate cleanly. You and me and others, he sent, in the same bundles of meaning that carried requests for walks and observations about mail carriers. Still there when bodies change. Still us. Her throat tightened. "I did not teach you that," she whispered. He snuffled at her hand, impatient with her sentimentality. He had known it all along. Her words had simply caught up. She might have remained a quiet oddity in one small town if not for the video. The neighbor across the street, a college kid named Miguel, with a drone hobby and an ongoing war against the raccoons that raided his trash, posted it online. He had been filming the nightly raccoon raids for weeks, trying to figure out how they coordinated. Sharon had not known that. She only knew that raccoons were clever and that yelling at them from her window did nothing. On the night in question, she stepped out to the sidewalk in her slippers because she could hear them arguing. The raccoons, not the neighbors. Their voices were high and chittering, old as the scrubby maple that leaned over the alley. 3 of them clustered on Miguel's trash cans. One clung to the fence. Another paced below, frantic. "Mine," the pacing one insisted. "Mine. Smell it. Mine." The others pushed back in overlapping chatter. If she were listening as a human, it would have been noise. Now she heard the distinct lines. "You were slow. You did not come. Food left unattended is everyone's. I smelled it first. You did not guard it." She understood all this from the cadence, from the way their paws stamped, from the sharpness in the clicks of their teeth. She had learned enough from watching them in the alley, from seeing their disputes over bread crusts and dropped fries. "Hey," she called in their language, throat shaping the clucks and chitters. The raccoons froze as if someone had pressed a button. Miguel, crouched behind his trash cans with his drone controller in hand, swore softly and kept filming. Sharon stepped closer, careful. She pitched her voice low. She made her shoulders small, her hands open. The pacing raccoon locked eyes with her. Fear trembled in his body, but so did fury and hunger. She listened a second longer, then repeated the key phrases back to them in summary. "You. First smell. You're right. You. Did not wait for him. Wrong." The raccoons shifted their weight as if considering a verdict. She pointed to one of the overturned cans. She made the gesture she had seen them use, a brief pushing motion followed by a retreat. A peace offering. One of them had done it once when lightning struck nearby, tossing a crust of pizza toward a younger raccoon and stepping back. It felt strange to do it with human hands, but the meaning landed. 2 of the raccoons grudgingly dragged a half-full bag to the edge of the mess and backed off. The pacing one scrambled up, grabbed a strip of meat from the bag, and fled to a nearby fence post where he could eat without being mobbed. The air shifted from confrontation to intense, suspicious snuffling. Raccoons were good at moving on. "Thank you," Sharon told them as they resumed their trash mining. "Please try not to knock everything over. He hates that." One of them flicked its ringed tail at her. It carried a sense of wry acknowledgement she had come to recognize. "We will do what we want, but we heard you." Miguel posted the video with the caption, "My neighbor just negotiated with raccoons." It got picked up. Of course it did. Within a week, strangers were in the comments asking if she could talk to their dogs through video chat. Someone on a paranormal forum declared her the real Dr. Dolittle. Someone else argued that she was faking it. Another thread insisted she was using secret whistles outside the range of normal hearing. She considered disappearing from the internet entirely. Then a producer from a regional morning show called. "We'd love to bring you on," the woman said, voice bright with practiced enthusiasm. "Just a quick segment. Light, fun, nothing heavy. You'll meet a few pets on air and we'll chat with their owners. Sort of a positive human interest thing." Sharon could have said no. She almost did, the word poised on her tongue. Then she thought of Jackson's quiet certainty about souls. She thought of the parakeet in the cage, of the greyhound in the shelter, of the way the raccoons had looked at her when she spoke their grievances back to them in a way that acknowledged both hunger and fairness. If being visible meant more people took their animals seriously, even a fraction more, it might be worth the discomfort. "Okay," she said instead, "but I want to be clear about what I am doing. I am not psychic. I am not reading their minds. I am listening to what they are already saying." "Of course," the producer said. "That sounds fascinating." Sharon heard the soft click of the word crazy in the pause between syllables. She ignored it. The show booked her for a Tuesday. Jackson came along, of course. He had no intention of missing a trip that involved car rides and new smells. The studio smelled like coffee, hairspray, and fear. The fear came from the animals waiting in the green room: 2 dogs, a cat in a carrier, and a rabbit in a child's arms. The cat's carrier rattled. Furious yowls shook its sides. "Hey," Sharon murmured, crouching. She kept her voice human until the child stepped closer. "Is he okay?" the girl asked, clutching the rabbit tighter. "He is very angry," Sharon said calmly. "Not at you. At the box. He does not like being in it." The girl bit her lip. "Mom says he has to stay in the carrier or he will run away." "That is true," Sharon said. "Can we uncover it, though, so he can see? And turn it so that the opening faces the wall, so he feels like he has a cave, not a trap?" The girl's mother gave a skeptical shrug, but helped her rearrange the carrier. Sharon slid the towel off the top and rotated the box so the door pointed toward the corner. Light still came in from the sides. The cat could see out if he chose, but no longer felt exposed. She hummed softly, building on the low vibration she had used with nervous dogs. Cats tuned to a different frequency, but the principle stood. She kept her eyes half closed, her body loose, her attention focused. The cat's cries shifted to a grumbling mutter, then to silence. Inside the carrier, 2 green eyes blinked at her. "Better," Sharon said very softly, in the cadence she had learned. "Alone, but not abandoned. Safe for now." The cat flicked his tail. He was still planning to complain later. Fair enough. The segment itself blurred. The hosts were friendly and skeptical in equal measure. They made jokes about her being the animal whisperer. They played a montage of the raccoon video, intercut with stock footage of deer and ducks. They asked about her gift. She corrected them where she could. "It is not a gift," she said on camera, fingers curled around the armrest of the couch. "It is attention. Anyone can pay attention. I just stuck with it. Longer than most people would." The real test came at the end. "For our last trick," the host said, smiling toward the camera, "we brought in someone you have not met before. This cat belongs to one of our producers. The producer is in another room. Neither you nor the cat knows each other. We will see if you can tell us anything interesting." Their language for her entire presence was careful. No one said prove it. They did not have to. The producer's cat arrived in the arms of a stagehand. Big, gray, long-haired. The cat's pupils were wide, its paws tense. It smelled like hand soap and a recent car ride. Sharon sat cross-legged on the floor. Cameras shifted to capture her face and the cat's body at once. Jackson watched from the side, his own body language neutral. He trusted her to handle this. She extended her hand and let the cat sniff. He did, reluctantly. His whiskers twitched. His ears flicked back and then forward. She inhaled with him. What came through was a compressed flash of impressions. Wood, dust, a narrow hallway, a high place that smelled of sun and old cloth, water dripping somewhere, a loud machine, warm laps, cold tile. She sorted it the way she had learned to sort bird calls. "You sleep on top of something," she said slowly, translating. "Not under the bed, above a closet. There is a shelf, or a storage bin. You like the smell. It is high up and warm, and you can look down the hallway." The studio was silent. Even the crew held still. "You hate the vacuum cleaner," she added. "You pee in places when it is left in the middle of the room. You are not afraid of the noise. You are angry that it moves into your paths. You want it put away when not in use. And there is a child who puts toys in your litter box sometimes. You bury one particular toy outside the box every time they do it." She opened her eyes. The cat stared at her as if she had just read his browsing history. In the control room, off camera, someone swore. The host's smile slipped, then returned, thinner. A moment later, the producer's voice crackled in an earpiece. "Yes," the host said into the camera, rattled. "Our producer confirms. The cat sleeps on top of a storage bin in the closet. He has peed on the vacuum 3 times, and her toddler keeps tossing action figures into the litter box." Laughter rippled through the studio, unsteady. Sharon did not laugh. It had not felt like a joke from inside the cat's mind. "We are nearly out of time," the co-host said, shuffling papers that did not need shuffling. "Thank you, Sharon, for whatever that was." "Thank you for inviting me," she said politely. On the way out, one of the camera operators followed her into the hall. His face looked strained. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I listened," she said. "Really listened. For a long time." He shook his head. "I shoot dog shows. I listen to animals all the time. I have never heard them like that." "Maybe you are listening for shots," she said gently. "Timing, framing. Not for them." He made a doubtful noise, but his eyes had softened. Outside in the parking lot, Jackson leapt into the car with the glee of a dog who had survived bright lights and strangers. Sharon leaned her forehead against the steering wheel for a moment. She had wanted, secretly, for it to fail. For nothing special to happen. For the cat to be as opaque as any other cat so she could go home and return to her small life. Instead, the world had tilted. Again. Farm animals came later. It started with an email from a reporter who covered local agriculture. He had seen the segment, the raccoon video, the follow-up stories. He wrote in brisk sentences that described her online presence as controversial and her apparent skills as intriguing. She almost deleted the email. Then she read the last line. "If you can indeed communicate with animals as claimed, I wonder what you would make of livestock. There is a family farm I cover regularly that might allow a visit." She had worked with pets and a few wild animals. Much of her childhood animal contact had been with backyard chickens and goats. None of those animals had been heading for slaughter. They had been pets with extra eggs and milk attached. The idea of walking into a barn full of animals raised for meat made her stomach clench. That alone was reason to go. The farm sat 40 minutes out of town. Fields unrolled on either side of the highway, bright green in spring. The farmhouse itself was old and clean. The barns smelled of hay, manure, and diesel fuel. The farmer, a woman in her 50s with sunburned cheeks and a weathered denim jacket, shook Sharon's hand with the grip of someone used to hoisting hay bales. "My kids love your raccoon thing," she said. "I think you are either full of it or onto something. Either way, the paper wants a story." "That seems fair," Sharon replied. They started with the chickens, hundreds of them, in a long, low shed. The air vibrated with clucks, rustles, the occasional sharp squawk as birds jostled. They were not in the worst conditions Sharon had seen online. They had space to move, perches, food, and water. They were also marked, in the farmer's ledger and in the schedule tacked to the office wall, as future meat. Sharon stood in the doorway and let the sound wash over her. Chickens thought fast. Faster than dogs, faster than raccoons. Thoughts flickered through them like wind through grass. Food. Roost. Rival. Rooster. Dust bath. Predator overhead. Neural paths worn into instincts over generations. Under it all, a quiet background hum. Not words, a shared understanding. This is what life is. Here, now. These walls. These rhythms. She stepped inside. The birds shifted. Some scuttled away. Others stretched their necks and peered, curious. A few, bolder than the rest, approached her boots and pecked experimentally at the laces. "Hello," Sharon murmured, adjusting her stance to mirror the line of their bodies. She bent at the waist until her face was closer to their level. "I am visiting." The boldest hen clicked her beak, unimpressed. Her auburn feathers had a darker blotch near the tail. Sharon noted her in the file in her head. Distinct. Easy to spot again. "You smell like others," the hen sent. Dog. Cat. Many animals. Not like here. "I live with one dog," Sharon told her quietly. "No cats. I have worked with many animals." The hen shook out her feathers. The concept of work did not sit well. She accepted that Sharon moved from place to place and from species to species. That was enough. Sharon pushed further. "Do you know what happens here, at the end?" she asked, voice soft enough that the farmer at the door did not catch the words. The hen's head tipped. She did not look confused. "End is end," came the answer. The hen offered a rapid sequence of images. Birds taken away in crates. The barn quieter afterward. New birds arriving. Life continuing. "Do you understand what happens in the place they go?" Sharon asked. "That they do not come back." The hen's eyes closed for a second, then opened. Yes. The word landed heavy. Not morbid. Not particularly tragic. Simply clear. "Are you afraid of it?" Sharon whispered. She expected a flood of terror. The hens in her childhood backyard had screamed when a fox got into the coop, their voices shrill and piercing. She had felt their fear like needles under her skin. Here, in this barn, there was fear too. Fear of hawks when shadows passed overhead. Fear of rough handling. Fear of end sat elsewhere. Distant. Like the idea of winter while the sun was high. Hens lived in the width of their own bodies. In the scrap of ground they could reach with their claws. The concept of anything else was more philosophy than dread. No compare, the hens sent after a long moment, sense threads trailing off into static. No other way to know. This is what is. Sharon's chest hurt. She could not accuse them of complacency. No one had shown them an alternative. Chickens did not dream of retirement homes. She touched the bold hen's back lightly. Warm feathers, quick breath, strong, small heart. "Thank you," she murmured. In the cow barn, the tone shifted. Cows chewed and glanced and thought in slow loops. They knew, in a different way than chickens, that trucks meant departure and that some who left did not return. Their response to that knowledge ranged from mild unease to a deep, resigned sorrow that reminded her of old men on park benches watching their neighborhoods change. The pigs hit hardest. The pig barn was loud and hot. Rows of pens held pink bodies that smelled of mud, straw, and something sharper underneath. The pigs' voices were complex. Grunts, screams, snorts. They layered over each other until it was almost white noise. High above the pens, a warped roof panel let in a thin blade of light. A single hen balanced on a crossbeam in that sunlit strip, eyes half closed, soaking up the warmth. Auburn feathers. A darker blotch near the tail. The farmer followed Sharon's glance and snorted. "They get in here sometimes from the chicken shed when a door's left cracked," she said. "Hard to keep 'em where they belong." The hen clicked her beak once, unimpressed, and stayed put. Sharon stood in the center aisle and let her breathing slow until she could distinguish threads. Over here, irritation at a neighbor who stole more than his share of food. Over there, boredom so thick it had turned into a kind of low-grade hopelessness. In the back pens, fear, intense, spike-shaped fear, clumped around certain corners, places where pigs remembered being shoved into trailers. "Do they know?" she asked under her breath, almost afraid of the answer. "They know some," the farmer said from beside her, misinterpreting the question. "They know the trailer. They do not like it. But they are pigs. They think about food and mud and whatever is in front of their snouts. They do not sit around worrying about the future." Sharon wished she could agree. She stepped closer to one of the pens, drawn by a steadier mind in the chaos. The pig in question was larger than the rest, scarred on one ear. His eyes met hers and held, muddy brown with a surprising clarity. He stood quiet while the rest jostled and snorted, as if saving his energy for something beyond the pen. "Hello," she said. "Hello," came back, fast and sure. It shocked her. She had grown used to having to slog through layers of instinct and distraction to reach the part of an animal that held this kind of direct message. With him, it was on the surface, unguarded. "You are very present," she said out loud, unable to find a better English word. He snorted. "Present. Here. Until not. Pretty simple." She swallowed. "You know what happens when they put you on the truck," she said quietly, visor of hair falling forward to hide her face from the farmer. He looked at her for a long, long moment. "End comes," he said. "Body stops. Parts go away. Others eat." "Does that bother you?" she whispered. He shifted his weight. Straw rustled under his hooves. "It is what happens," he said simply. "To us. To you. Later. To all bodies." She had suspected it. Hearing it put so plain made her dizzy. "Do you ever wish for something else?" she pressed, voice raw. "More space. Longer life. No slaughter?" "Wish," he echoed. He tasted the concept. Old word. From far back. There was a sense of ancestors running in open fields, of oak trees and mud wallows, and no walls. Then the image collapsed into the concrete of his pen, the metal bars, the routine. "No compare," he said, using the same shape of thought the hen had used. "This is what is." She wanted to shake him, to show him videos of sanctuary pigs rolling in endless mud, to offer him language for injustice, system, exploitation. He did not need those words. They would not change the pen around him. "When?" she asked instead, voice barely audible. "Do you think it will be your turn?" He flicked his ear, scarred side twitching. "Soon," he said, without drama. "Tomorrow, maybe." "They look at me like I am ready." Her stomach flipped. Tomorrow, she repeated. He snuffled, as if scenting the future. The sense she got from him was not excitement or terror. It was something like readiness, the way a runner might feel before a race, or a tired old man might feel before sleep. She left the pig barn shaken. The reporter's questions slid off her as they walked back toward the farmhouse. He wanted quotes. She gave him facts. Yes, she said. The animals seem to understand more than most people think. Yes, they know when their companions are taken. Yes, they have individual personalities. She did not try to explain that a pig had just told her he believed tomorrow was his last day on earth, and that he accepted it with a calmness that made her feel small. That night, back home, she lay awake while Jackson snored, and the chickens she had recently taken in rustled in the coop she had cobbled together that week in her yard. She had not planned to bring animals home from the farm that first visit. Then she had met a handful of hens headed for the cull truck, birds that had laid enough eggs and lost enough feathers to be considered spent. "Can I buy them?" she had asked the farmer impulsively. The woman had shrugged. "If you want. They will not last long either way." Now the hens were scratching in her yard, puzzled by the space and the sunlight and the sudden absence of 400 companions. The bold one with the blotch near her tail had already started patrolling the fence line like it was a perimeter to be memorized. Sharon had named her Dot. She tried not to name the others, knowing some might not live long, then failed. They earned names as naturally as breaths. She could not stop thinking of the pig. Jackson's paw twitched in his sleep. Somewhere in the coop, a hen clucked softly in dream. The night wrapped around the house, thick and alive. "Tomorrow," he had said. She watched the digital clock on her bedside table tick toward tomorrow. "What do I do?" she whispered to the darkness. No voice answered out loud. In her chest, something tightened. Responsibility. Helplessness. Rage. She thought of the pig's acceptance, of his suggestion that death was not an anomaly, but a stage in something larger. He had not used the word reincarnation. Pigs did not talk about doctrines. What he had sent in that one brief flash, when she pressed about soul and continuation, had felt like this. A sense of having been before. Different body? Same watching. If he trusts that, she thought, who am I to interfere? The question kept her awake. At 6 a.m, she sat up. Jackson lifted his head, bleary, ears askew. "We are going to the slaughterhouse," she told him. "Now." He stretched, shook himself, and jumped off the bed. He did not ask why. He trusted her, too. The slaughterhouse sat on the edge of an industrial park. Gray walls, chain-link fence, trucks lined up at the loading docks like patient metal cattle. The smell hit before she got out of the car. Blood, fear, bleach, the kind of cold she felt in her teeth. She left Jackson in the car with the windows cracked. Inside the fence, pigs waited in holding pens. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The sound charged the air, high and low at once. She could have blocked it out. Humans did that all the time. They put on mental headphones and turned the volume down on whatever hurt too much. Instead, she opened herself. Voices crashed in. Some pigs screamed, their terror sharp enough to slice skin. Others muttered restlessly, their thoughts circling food and discomfort. A few, a very few, were calm. They radiated a steadiness that did not fit the surroundings. She followed one such steady thread through the din. He stood near the back of the far pen. Scarred ear. Same eyes. He saw her before she saw him. "You came," he sent, with no surprise. "Yes," she said aloud, ignoring the odd looks from workers hauling crates. "I came." She climbed the narrow metal steps to his pen, The pigs near the gate pushed and squealed, bodies pressed tight. She found herself murmuring reassurance to them in a hoarse, low voice, trying to bleed some of the panic off. It only helped a little. Panic was rational here. "You do not have to do this," she told the scarred pig when she reached him. "I can take you out. I can pay." He snorted, a sound with a flavor of amusement. "Pay who?" he asked. "For what?" "My body?" "Yes," she said bluntly. "For your body. For your life. So you do not die here." He considered that. The air around them vibrated with screams. In the next room, metal clashed on metal. A gate slammed. A pig's voice cut off mid-shriek. "This is where my life ends," he said. "Here, there, on a field, in a forest. Bodies stop. That is what they do." "It does not have to be now," she insisted, knuckles white on the pen rail. "It does not have to be like this." He lifted his snout, inhaled. He tasted fear in the air and did not flinch. "End is end," he repeated. "Here is sharp, fast, not worst." She wanted to tell him about sanctuaries, about soft mud and long sun naps, and people who would scratch his back just because he existed. She showed him images in the only way she could, pushing them through her chest. Pigs rolling in fields, hens sunbathing, goats leaping. He received them, eyes half closed. "That looks nice," he admitted. "Strange. Not like what is in my bones." "In your bones?" she echoed. He rooted in the straw, searching for the right shape of thought. "We remember," he sent slowly. "Back, eating, running, being eating others, bodies changing, same, watching." Her breath caught. "You remember other lives," she said. "Not the way you mean," he answered. "Not names and faces. Knowing that this stops and something else watches later. Different body. Same, me." He was not parroting something she had told him. This belief belonged to him, to his kind. "If that is true," she said carefully, "then it will be true later too. In a field behind my house. In mud I let you roll in a life with more space." He huffed. "Maybe," he allowed, "but this is my line, my story. It has a shape. Birth here, eat here, die here. I feel it. It fits." A worker approached, boots thudding on the damp concrete. "Ma'am," he called over the noise, "you can't be in here. It's not safe." "I want to buy him," she said, pointing to the scarred pig. "That one. Right now." The worker, a woman with tired eyes and a hairnet, glanced from Sharon to the pig and back. "They're already on the schedule," she said. "We do not sell out of holding. You should talk to the office." The pig met Sharon's gaze. "See?" he said, not unkindly. She felt herself fraying. "Please," she said to the worker, "just give me 5 minutes. Can I talk to whoever is in charge?" The woman hesitated, then jerked her chin toward a door. "Office is that way. Make it quick." Sharon looked back at the pig. "I am not giving up," she told him, words fierce. He snuffled, exasperated and fond. "You stubborn," he sent, like boar who broke fence twice. "I will be back," she said. He believed her. She could feel it. In the office, fluorescent lights buzzed over metal desks stacked with paperwork. A man in a collared shirt listened to her request with the strained patience of someone used to dealing with meat buyers and inspections, not emotional strangers. "We are under contract with the farm," he said. "The pigs come in. They get processed. We can't just let you walk out with one because you got attached." "I will pay you," she said, voice steady. "Whatever you would make from his carcass. More, if I have to. I will sign whatever liability waivers you want. I will take full responsibility." "It is not that simple," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "We have inventory logs, traceability. We have to account for every animal that comes through those gates." She knew on some level that he was right. Systems relied on order. She also knew that order sometimes became an excuse. "Then log him as dead," she said, "and let him walk out with me instead." He stared at her. "That would be falsifying records," he said slowly. "Yes," she said, "it would." The word hung between them. Behind it, the noise of the plant went on, relentless. He looked at her for a long time. His eyes slid past her to the window that overlooked the holding pens. The scarred pig stood where she had left him, calm in the sea of terror. "You some kind of activist?" he asked, tone guarded. "I am someone who talks to animals," she replied, "and I am asking you, as one human to another, to let me save that one." "You talk to them," he repeated, skeptical, but something in his voice had shifted. "Yes." "Like, you think you understand them, or you actually understand them?" She met his gaze. "I know it sounds insane, but it is real. He knows he is going to die here. He has accepted it. I have to live with the fact that I could have changed that and chose not to. You will have to live with it too." It was unfair. She knew it. She said it anyway. He flinched. "My kids love bacon," he muttered, almost to himself. "I grew up on a farm. This is just what we do." He rubbed his face with his hands. For a second, the line between his shoulders sagged. "Do they know?" he asked suddenly. "The pigs? Do they know what happens in there?" "Yes," she said. "They do." He swallowed. "Do they hate us for it?" he asked. The answer was complicated. Some pigs directed fear at humans. Some did not connect individual workers with the system that penned and killed them. Their anger splashed in all directions, and under it all, that same steady acceptance she had felt from the scarred pig and the hens and the cows. "They hurt," she said quietly. "They are afraid. Some of them forgive anyway. Some do not. They know you could make it kinder." His eyes filled with something like guilt and something like grief. "Give me his number," he said abruptly. "The pig. The tag on his ear. I will see what I can do." Her breath left her in a rush. "Thank you," she said. He waved her away, as if he did not want to be thanked for something he had not fully decided to do yet. Back at the pen, she scribbled the pig's ear tag number on her palm with a pen from her pocket. The worker woman watched from the aisle. There was something raw in her expression. "You really think they understand?" she said. "I do not think," Sharon replied. "I know." The woman looked out at the pigs. Her jaw clenched. "I need this job," she said, voice low. "I got kids. I got a mortgage. I try not to think about what they feel." "I know," Sharon said. "I had a dog once," the woman went on, eyes distant. "He used to look at me like he knew what I was thinking. When we put him down, he licked my face like he was comforting me. Sometimes I think about that when I am in there. I try not to." Her hands shook. "If what you are saying is true," she said, "I do not know how I am supposed to keep doing this." "Maybe you are not," Sharon said quietly. "Maybe you find something else. Or maybe you stay and you make it less bad, as much as you can. I do not know. I only know that he," she nodded toward the scarred pig, "deserves a choice. Just once." The woman wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "You really can hear them?" she asked. "Yes," Sharon said simply. The woman exhaled. "Wait here." She disappeared toward the office. Time stretched. The air in the holding area seemed to grow thicker. Another group of pigs was herded through a gate toward the kill floor. Their screams tore through her. The scarred pig watched her. Calm. Resolute. "You tried," he sent. "That is enough." "No," she said through her teeth. "It is not." He sighed. A soft blast of air. "Stubborn," he reminded her. "You can be stubborn too," she shot back. He grunted, amused. The worker returned. "Come on," she said, voice rough. "We are getting him out." Sharon's knees almost buckled with relief. "Thank you," she said. "Do not thank me yet," the woman muttered. "If this comes back on me, I could lose my job." "I am sorry," Sharon said. The woman shook her head. "I have been sorry for a long time," she said. "This is the first thing that feels not sorry." They opened the pen and coaxed the scarred pig out. He walked calmly, hooves clicking on the concrete. Other pigs pressed against the bars, watching. "You are leaving," one squealed, half wonder, half accusation. She heard the scarred pig's answer. "My story changed," he said simply. "Yours might too. Another time." It was cruel to give them that hope, part of her argued. The larger part overruled it. Hope was not the enemy. They led him around the edge of the building to a side gate. No one stopped them. No alarms rang. The man from the office watched from an upstairs window, jaw tight. He lifted a hand, half wave, half surrender. "His tag is marked as processed," the worker said quietly. "Paperwork says he went on the truck. As far as the system is concerned, he is meat." "He is not," Sharon said. "Not anymore." She loaded him into the back of her old SUV on a nest of blankets and straw. Jackson watched from the front seat, ears high. The pig snorted at him. "Dog," he noted. "Pig," Jackson replied, wary and curious. They sniffed each other, noses stretching over the seatback. "Alive," the pig added. Jackson's tail wagged slowly. "Same." As they pulled away, Sharon glanced in the rearview mirror. The worker woman stood by the gate, arms folded tight around herself, watching. Their eyes met. Sharon lifted a hand. The woman nodded once. Guilt still sat heavy in the air around the slaughterhouse. It would not evaporate because of one pig. But something had shifted. A tiny weight on the scale. She clung to that. Having a pig in a suburban backyard was not exactly legal. She knew that. She knew as she drove home with the scarred pig occupying most of her cargo space that she was inviting zoning laws and code enforcement into her life. She did not care. Not yet. For the first few days, she managed by keeping him inside. She even convinced him to accept her giving him a bath. Her house was small, but pigs did not need much room if they had enough to explore with their noses. She cleared out the spare bedroom, rolled up the rug, and laid down straw and blankets. An old kiddie pool became a makeshift rooting box, filled with dirt and vegetable scraps. The pig investigated every inch with thorough, efficient curiosity. He learned the corners of the hall, the feel of the sofa legs, the angle of the doorway into the kitchen. He bumped his snout against everything, mapping. "You live strange," he commented after the third circuit. "All boxes and straight lines." "You lived in a box," she pointed out. He snorted. "Different box. Fewer smells." He had never had this many individual objects to catalog. He took quiet delight in it. The couch smelled like dog and spilled coffee, and the faint trace of something floral from an air freshener. The bookcase smelled like paper and dust and ink and 100 hands. He paused a long time at the window. Light. "Sun," she agreed. "We will get you more of that." Jackson watched this new arrangement with mixed feelings. On the one hand, competition for attention. On the other hand, a new friend. He solved the conflict by shadowing Sharon room to room, inserting himself between her and the pig when possible, then relaxing when she scratched his ears and murmured reassurance. "You are still my first," she told him, hand on his collar. "He is not replacing you. We are expanding." The pig snorted from his bedding. "Dog thinks in first and second," he observed. "Pig thinks in herd." Sharon laughed softly. "We are a herd now," she said. "Of 3. 4, if you count the chickens." The chickens, meanwhile, were furious. From their coop in the yard, they clucked and muttered and stomped, upset by the presence of a pig they could smell, but not see. Dot paced the run. Feathers puffed. "Pig here. Pig here," she sent, looping the thought around and around. "Where? Why? How?" "Later," Sharon called through the window. "You will meet him later, I promise." Dot did not understand calendars. She understood now and not now. This was definitely not now. Sharon filled out forms online until her eyes hurt. She learned more about local livestock ordinances in 2 days than she had in her entire life. There were permits for backyard chickens, which she already had. There were, it turned out, permits for miniature swine kept as pets, with restrictions. Her pig was not miniature. He was not a pink teacup. He was a standard farm pig with a scarred ear and a soul full of memories. She filed anyway. On the application, under reason for keeping animal, she wrote, "Companion animal, rescued from slaughter." Under experience with species, she wrote, "Lifelong animal caretaker, trained groomer, volunteer at local shelter, extensive experience with behavior and welfare." She did not mention that she could hear his thoughts. The application would take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, she cleaned up after him twice a day, took him out to the backyard when the neighbors were at work, and pretended hard that nothing unusual was happening in her living room. One afternoon, as she knelt to refill his water, he regarded her with that same steady gaze he had given her in the pen. "You changed my story," he said. "Yes," she replied. "I did." He sorted through his feelings about that for a while. Gratitude, annoyance, curiosity, something like loss. "I was ready," he said at last. "I know," she said. "I was not." He snuffed, amused. "You talk like pig," he observed. "Our words, your words, mixed." "You talk like philosopher," she shot back. He rolled onto his side, legs extended, belly exposed. "Scratch," he requested. "Right there." She complied. His skin was rough under her fingers, bristly hair pushing back. He grunted in pleasure, eyes closing. "Do not ruin this," he added lazily. "I am trying not to," she said. Outside, Dot and the other hens clucked louder, indignant. "Pig," Dot insisted. "Where?" "Tomorrow," Sharon called. "You will meet him tomorrow." She meant it this time. The first meeting between the pig and the chickens felt like a reunion. She waited until sunset, when the neighborhood quieted. The permit had not come through yet, but she could not keep sneaking a full-grown pig in and out of her house forever. Someone would notice. She led him outside on a makeshift harness, cobbled from straps and buckles she had lying around from years of dog gear. He disliked the confinement, but tolerated it. Outside, the air smelled different to him. Less metal, less blood, more soil, more plants, more complicated. He froze on the back steps and inhaled. "New?" "Yes," she said. "New." She guided him down into the yard. The grass felt odd between his hooves. He tested it, pressing, snuffling, finally biting a clump free and chewing thoughtfully. "Not bad," he conceded. The chicken coop stood in the corner of the yard, under a tree. The hens clustered at the far end of the run, eyes wide, feathers sleek. "Pig," Dot sent, loud and clear now that she could see him. "Pig from before." The pig's head snapped up. "Dot," he sent back, surprise rippling through him. "Barn roof, far corner. You sat there." Images flickered between them. The long, low shed, the patch of sunlight that fell through a gap in the roof at a specific time each day. Dot perched in that beam, eyes half closed, dust motes swirling around her. He had watched her from his pen when he was very young, when his world had been smaller. "You used to sing," he added, a note of fondness he had not known he carried. Dot fluffed, flattered. "I did not sing," she argued. "I complained." "Same thing," Sharon said under her breath. She opened the coop door. The hens hesitated, then spilled out into the yard in a burst of flapping and clucking. Their feet hit the grass. They scattered, then reoriented, drawn by the strange bulk of the pig. They approached in a hesitant semicircle. The pig lowered his head so his eyes were closer to their level. He smelled like straw, concrete, disinfectant, and now Sharon's laundry detergent. They smelled like dust, feathers, and the faint tang of eggs. "Not here," Dot observed, circling him. "Better." "Better," he agreed. The hens understood better. They did not have words for ethics or destiny. They knew comfort and discomfort. Here, in this yard, there was space to scratch and dust bathe and roost in low branches. There were still predators. Hawks visited. Neighborhood cats watched. Sharon reinforced the fence. They knew, somewhere under their breastbones, that they would still die. Everyone dies. They did not know when. It no longer felt scheduled. The pig's sense of the future shifted as he watched them. "You were going to eat me," he remarked to Sharon one evening. Not accusing, just curious. "Not personally," she said, seated on the grass with her back against the tree. Jackson lay beside her, snout on her thigh. The pig rooted in a patch of soil, enjoying the way it crumbled. The hens picked through clippings nearby. "I do eat meat," she added, because he deserved honesty. Less now, also differently. "But yes, people like me eat pigs like you." "Not anymore," he observed. "Not you," she agreed. "Why?" he asked. "You eat others. Not me." She thought about that. "Because I know you," she said finally. "Because we have talked. Because you asked me to scratch your belly and told me about your memories and made fun of my small kitchen. Because I know what you see when you look at the sky. You could know others," he pointed out, "if you listened." "I cannot save everyone," she said, the words bitter. He snorted. "You saved some," he said. "Me. Them." He nodded toward the hens. "That is more than none." It was a small, pragmatic comfort. She tried to hold on to it when the hate mail arrived. After the story about the farm ran, the reporter wrote a follow-up piece about the pig she had rescued from slaughter. He used that word, rescued. It left teeth marks in people. Some readers called her a hero in the comments, declared they were giving up bacon, asked how they could help. Others called her a hypocrite, a thief, an emotional woman who did not understand economics or food chains. She did not answer them. Instead, she filled out more paperwork. Zoning boards moved slowly. Neighbors talked. One afternoon, a white envelope arrived in the mail with the city logo in the corner. Her heart climbed into her throat as she tore it open. Permit approved. She read it twice, then laughed so hard she startled the hens. "We are legal," she told the pig, waving the paper. He looked up from his mud wallow, unimpressed. "We were here either way," he pointed out. "True," she said, "but now no one is going to come haul you away because of a line in a file." "Lines matter to you," he observed. "They do," she admitted. The permit came with conditions. She had to maintain cleanliness, provide adequate space and shelter, and allow inspections. She already did those things. Her yard transformed further. She built a sturdier pig shelter with a sloped roof and a thick bed of straw. She extended the chicken run. She installed a second gate. Her life narrowed and widened at once. She still went to the grooming studio and the shelter. She still fielded calls from people who wanted her to talk to their pets. She still got invitations to appear on shows. She declined most of them. When she accepted, she insisted on conditions. No tricks, no staged drama. She wanted to talk about individual animals, not perform parlor magic. Every night she came home to mud on her boots, feathers on her sweater, and a beagle who greeted her at the door with a bark she could now translate perfectly as, "You are back. Finally." Sometimes, in the hours just before dawn, she woke with the weight of all the animals she had not saved pressing on her chest. Rows of pigs, crates of chickens, cows in line. Their voices layered, a chorus of what is and what could be. She would get up, pull on a jacket, and step into the yard. The world at that hour was quiet. The streetlights hummed. The sky above the yard held a few early birds, their calls softer than daytime but still patterned. The hens dozed on their perches. The pig snored, a rumbling sound under the straw. Jackson patted at her heels, nose twitching. She would lean against the fence and listen. Sometimes she whispered to the darkness. To the trucks she knew were on the road, carrying animals toward ends they understood and did not understand. "I hear you," she would say, in whatever language fit. "Dog, pig, bird, I am trying." The night did not answer in words. It answered in small things. The warm bulk of the pig shifting in sleep. The soft cluck of a hen adjusting her wings. The press of Jackson's head against her thigh. She could not change the whole system. Not alone. She knew that now, with the clear, cold certainty of someone who had talked to too many beings caught in its machinery. She could change this yard. In the end, that was where she chose to stand. One evening, months after she had brought the pig home, she sat on the back steps with a mug of tea. Jackson lay beside her, chin on her foot. The hens scratched in the dying light, their feathers turning gold. The pig wallowed, then emerged from his mud patch streaked and satisfied. Overhead, sparrows chattered in the branches. She listened. The three-note pattern she had first noticed months ago repeated, slightly different now, threaded with other calls. Alarm, food, territory, courtship, a tapestry, woven new every day. She could pick out each phrase. She could tell who was warning whom about the neighbor's cat, who was bragging about a found crust of bread, who was complaining about a rival on their favorite branch. The knowledge no longer felt like intrusion. It felt like belonging. "What are they saying?" a voice asked from the gate. She looked up. It was the slaughterhouse worker. The woman from that charged morning. She wore jeans and a faded sweatshirt. Her hair was down. There was no name tag on her chest. "Hi," Sharon said, standing. Jackson trotted over to sniff. The hens eyed the stranger, then returned to their business. The pig came closer, curious. "You," he said, recognizing her scent. "Yeah," the woman murmured, eyes shining, almost as if she understood him too. "Me." She looked thinner than Sharon remembered. Tired, but in a different way. "I quit," she said without preamble. "The day after you took him. I could not walk back in there. I got a job at the feed store instead." Pays less. Smells better. Sharon's throat tightened. I am glad, she said. About the smells, at least. The woman laughed, a short surprised sound. I kept thinking about what you said, she admitted. About how they know. About how my dog looked at me. I could not keep shutting it off. So I did something small. I left. That is not small, Sharon said. The woman shrugged, embarrassed. I wanted to see him, she said, eyes on the pig. Make sure he is okay. The pig approached the fence, snout twitching. She reached out hesitantly. He sniffed her fingers, then pressed his head into her palm. You helped, he sent. She did not hear the exact words. She felt something, a softening, a warmth. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. What are they saying? She asked again, nodding toward the sparrows. The birds. Sharon listened. They are arguing about a worm, she said, and warning each other about the cat on the roof 2 houses down. And one of them is telling the others, over and over, that this is his branch, even though no one cares. The woman smiled. Sounds about right, she said. They stood there a while in comfortable silence. The sky darkened. One by one, the sparrows fell quiet, tucking their heads under their wings. The hens settled. The pig returned to his shelter. Jackson leaned against Sharon's leg. The world did not change. It did, in a way she could not measure with numbers or charts. For these animals. Sharon took a breath and let it out slowly. Above them, in the dimming light, a single bird called. A soft, clear note. Something close to acknowledgement.